It's the Two Ordinary Cops, and we are back. Damo, mate, how are you?
Good, mate. Good. What's going on in Brisbane?
Well, mate, same old, same old. Just working my ass off at the moment, but it's getting a little bit cooler. So, yeah, no, pretty happy with that. And, mate, I believe you're actually coming to the Sunshine State tomorrow.
Yep, heading to Brizzy. Going to come up for the weekend. Should be really good, actually. Saturday night, catching up with a couple of old mates from the NT, and apparently a couple of friends of theirs from QPS too. So that should be good. I think my
Yeah.
brother's going to come for a beer too. So he's based at 6 RAR now. So that'll be
Oh,
good.
awesome.
Yeah. So
Oh,
he's going to
jeez.
come and yeah.
Yeah, bloody hell, mate.
Six
I've got this.
RAR. For those who don't know anything about the army, there's an army infantry unit in Brisbane called Six Battalion Royal Australian Regiment. So he's a junior lieutenant there. So he
All
should
right.
come and have a beer. Yeah,
Yep. Well,
that's about it, mate. My world's been cattle and basically designing a course for my work, and that's about it.
well, mate, I'll just make a bit of a joke because we are going to talk about complaints later on about. But I imagine the cattle don't complain too much.
No, and you can't reason with them. And they
No.
weigh the ones. These are big old bullocks. They weigh about 700 kilos, and they just break stuff, and they just got no. Yeah, they do whatever their brain tells them to do. They're very small, bloody brain. But anyway, that's all right.
Yeah.
But
So
mate, I do have a humorous little shout out.
okay, go for it.
So, obviously, I think it was two episodes ago. I think we spoke about young Ruby Shather, who's gone up to the NT at Mount Riddick Station. Well, anyway, I was at the Ebor pub the other day, and I've mentioned them plenty of times. Big Dog and Kel, their husband wife team that work behind the bar there. And anyway, Kelly said, Big Dog got me onto your podcast, and I was listening to it the other day, and I had it on my little speaker, the little waterproof speaker, next to the sink while I was doing a few things. Something happened and got bumped and it fell into the water and I thought it was going to break. Anyway, the podcast kept playing and she goes, I've now got proof that you can actually speak underwater. And she said she could still hear my voice coming through the water in the sink. So plenty of people have told me I could speak underwater and wet cement or whatever else. Well, I can't prove wet cement, but I can guarantee you I can talk underwater.
Yeah, mate, I'll vouch for that. I've known you for 18 years. And actually, in saying that, it was yesterday. It was our 18 years since joining the police.
It was indeed. Yep, 26th of February 2007 we joined.
And
So that gives us a little shout out. Big shout out to Squad 91, especially those people who are still serving members up there. 18 years.
yeah, a long time. And thanks to Craig Ramsey telling me I've still got the same haircut I did when I joined the police.
You did, mate. Yep. No, exactly right.
Yeah,
What are we on about today, my friend?
well, mate, we're going to talk about complaints against police, but look, every police officer got a complaint. Well, I've always said, and I think it's widely known that if you don't get complaints against you, you're not doing your job properly. And I think you'd vouch for that as well, wouldn't you, Damo?
Oh, I don't really know any frontline copper who was getting in and amongst it who didn't get complaints. And it doesn't mean they're justified. It just means that crooks will do everything they can to get out of trouble, and that's all that is. But look, the thing we must caveat talking about complaints against police is that absolutely there are legitimate complaints against the conduct of police officers. Police are just human beings like everyone else, and there's no excuses for abusing people, for using excessive force, for anything like that. It's not, there's no time for that. The disciplinary process sits there for a reason. We know that there are what the general population don't see is that police get smashed internally for all kinds of stuff, and Monday morning quarterbacked like you wouldn't believe, and then you might have a job where you've used force or something, and the next day you're being called to, which is you've always got to justify force. I'm not saying that, but where it's completely obvious, they go, "What did you think of this? You think of that?" And you said, "Not really, because it was happening, and I didn't have 20 minutes to go and rewind the body worn and have a look here and there." And no, it was all happening. It was dynamic, and you've got to take that into consideration.
Yeah.
So I think our point is that we're not the ones we're going to talk about today. I never got like a really serious complaint against police. It wasn't that, and one that was ever justified, really.
Yeah.
Not saying I never got in trouble. There was times I got in trouble for things, but that was mostly mistakes, and there was the odd thing I did wrong as you going through the job, just learning a trade. But the overwhelming majority of my complaints were complete rubbish from people who just wanted to get out. So I think we're going with that. But I think you're going to open it up, mate, with a bit of a story you've been itching to tell for months.
Well, I have, mate. This is probably the biggest complaint I had against me. Before I start that off, I actually was talking to. I had to get some. I think I might have mentioned this before, but I had to get some information about my complaints about something I was going into after the police, and I was talking to the officer from Tay Cutters anyway, and I just made the joke. And I said to her, I said, you're not doing your job properly if you don't get complaints. And she turned around and said, I've never had a complaint against me. And I said, exactly.
Yeah,
Um, because I wasn't in the job anymore, so I could get away with that.
yeah.
But but yeah, taking nothing away back. But mate, this is probably my biggest complaint I ever had against me, and it was serious, but it's also funny. Um, so I'll start it off. It must have been probably about 2000, early 2012, or late 2011. Can't really remember, but I was at that time. I was actually rostered down at the shop front, and I was usually working, helping out, or training a lot of the Aboriginal community police officers down there. And that was stationed. I was out at the Oasis Shopping Centre, but at about 6 o'clock, so I was working at 2 till 10 in the evening, so 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. And about 6 p.m., I get a call from the shift sergeant, and he said, mate, we're short of an officer tonight, for the 7 till 7, the 12-hour shift, so 7 p.m. till 7 a.m. He said, can you step in and work with them? And I was at 7 o'clock, and I said, yeah, I can definitely do that. So he said, you'll be in overtime since, after 10 p.m. I said, yeah. And it was with one of my old crews. So anyway, now as I go through this story, I know there's probably going to be some police officers listening. There's also going to be some civilians listening. And I can guarantee you I would have done this differently. And I'll explain that afterwards. But anyway, it was a pretty cruisy night. I was working with one of my old shift crews, so just traveling around, nothing really much going on, right up until just after midnight. And I think it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. We get this call, and somebody. No, it must have been about 2 o'clock. When did they have the lockout for the nightclub? Do you remember, Damo? Was that
Yeah, about
midnight?
2 a.m. Between 2 and 3 a.m., I think it was.
Yeah. So it must have been about 2 a.m. So they've pulled the roller door down. But just as they were doing it, there was three people, a woman and two blokes, have rocked up and they wanted to get in.
Which pub's this?
Was it with the nightclub? What was that one
Oh,
called?
it would have been, yeah. Yeah, okay. So the Stewart
Um,
Hotel.
yeah.
Yeah.
And anyway, they've given us a call because what's happened is the bouncer said, no, you're not allowed in. They pulled the roller door down, and one of them has actually kicked and damaged the roller door. So they're basically calling us up, going, somebody's damaged it. We don't know who, but we'll look at the CCTV footage and we'll get back to you. But they're just now walking up to BP. Those three people. So anyway, I head down there, and I'm working with Peter Hansen. I'll mention his name. So I was training him. Oh well, I wasn't then. I'd already trained him in the past, but I was working with him, and I was also working Ben Udi. Shout out to Ben Udi and Beck Hudson, mate, who we're catching up with tomorrow.
Yeah.
So they were in the other car. Anyway, so we drive down there. We have a quick chat to the bouncer, and he said, "Oh, I'm not sure," but he gave a description of the people and said, "Oh, they're just gone into BP." Anyway, so we drive around to BP, and I remember Udi said to me, he goes, "Oh," he said, "how do you want to handle this?" I said, "Mate, we'll just get their details, description of what they're wearing, and then we can come back once they've viewed the CCTV. We can then look at pressing charges for criminal damage and all that sort of stuff." So it was pretty straightforward. So anyway, they're inside, and we've basically identified the three. And as we've walked in, I know two of them. But what's happened is that one of the young blokes who I know, he's walked away as we've walked in, and Ben Udi, who didn't know him, has walked over towards and just to get his details, his license, and all that sort of thing in relation to the offence. And I'm sitting there chatting to the woman who was the mother of the one that walked away, and another guy who was one of their friends. And anyway, I'm just getting their details and writing it down. But during this time, and that they were fine. They just gave me their license, and I told them what it was in relation to, and nothing really out of the ordinary. And then I walked over to Ben Udi, and Ben Udi was talking to this bloke, and this guy's being a real dick, and he's just given like his name is Calvin Klein. Yeah, like the underwear fucking
Just
thing, and
rubbish.
he's
Yeah.
just he's just being a dickhead. Anyway, and Bennett is just explaining to him, and he said, "Look, it's an offence to give a false name, blah blah blah." And what happened then? He basically got his name, but then he was given this address as at the hospital because I think he was dating a nurse at the time. And anyway, he and Bennett's going, "Oh mate, I need your real address," and blah blah blah. Anyway, I've kind of stepped in, and I knew the bloke. I dealt with him a couple of years earlier, and I just said, I said, look, mate, all it is, we just need your correct details so we can have a chat to you later on. It's nothing serious." And anyway, he's actually gone over and he's put his finger on my chest. You know how they get people to look down and then they try and flick you in the face. Anyway, so he's kind of touched me in the chest, not hard, and I've kind of gone to look down. I go, I know what's going to go. And he's tried to flick me. Anyway, I've moved my head back and I've looked at Ben Udi and we've just made the decision. That's it, mate. That's assault police. You're under arrest because he's already been a dick. You've stepped over the line. And,
Well, he hasn't given you your name and address. So straight
well,
away, he's committed the offence there in relation to an offence. So he's done.
yeah. So anyway, we grab him and we kicking and screaming, mate. I'll tell you what, he was a real handful. But Ben Udi and I wrestled him out, escorted him out, doing our holds and all that sort of thing. He was kicking and fighting, tooth and nail. At this time, the mother has just really kicked up a stink, and so she's jumping. Mate, if you ever seen a woman in her, I don't know, she would have been 40s, 50s or something like that, throwing a tantrum, almost on the ground, stamping her feet and hands on the ground. But she was getting quite aggressive or trying to get in our way, and Beck and Pete were just trying to hold her back and all that sort of thing. And we dealt with old mate. We put him in the cage. Anyway, she was still carrying on, and I basically stepped into the role. I was the most senior officer there, and I stepped in the role. I said, "Mate, look, calm down, blah, blah." And she goes, "Oh, I want to see the sergeant, rah, rah." I said, "Well, you're entitled to that. I want to make a complaint." "Okay, yeah, that's fine." And anyway, I tried to call the sergeant. He was busy. And he said, "Oh, I can't come down there, but if she can come up to the station, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Well, you can come up to the station." "Oh, I want to lift up the station." "Well, it's all right. Well, we can definitely accommodate that." We had two cars there, so he's in the back one. She goes, "I want to travel with my son." I said, "It's not happening." And I said, "However, you can travel on voluntarily in the cage of the other vehicle." I said, "I'm not your behaviour. I'm not going to allow you to sit in the back seat of the police car." Blah blah. Anyway, so she agreed to that. So she jumped in the back of the other cage, which was the one Pete and I were driving, and Pete was driving, and Beck and Ben Udi basically conveyed old mate up. But what happened was we put her in, and we didn't lock the cage because she wasn't under arrest, she wasn't under protective custody. So anyway, we then old mate went and had a chat to her while we're getting in the front of the car, and we believe, or I think we saw it on the CCTV, he's unlatched the thing, and as we've driven off, the cages like swung open. Anyway, we've heard it straight away, and we've stopped, and she's jumped out, carrying on. "You're trying to kill me, blah blah blah." And I said, "Well, that's it." I said, "No, you can find your own way up." She goes, "Oh no, I want to lift." I said, "Well, stop your complaining, get in, blah blah." And then old mate said, "Oh, can I hop in too?" I said, "Yeah, right, too easy. If you want to lift up there, you can." So they've jumped back in the cage, and we've driven up, and it's raining. Anyway, as we're coming up to the turn to go into Acacia Drive to go round and then come up to the back of the police station, it's raining, so Pete's just slowing down and going in the corner, and we hear this smash in the back of the cage. Anyway, I've turned around, old mate's sitting at the back of the cage. He hasn't moved at all, but she's thrown herself at the front of the cage, and anyway, so we've gone. I said, "Oh, I just had a look," and I said, "Oh, don't worry, she's just carrying on." Anyway, we pulled up at the station, got her out, and she's carrying on about how we slammed her foot on the brake. Going, "No, we didn't." Blah blah blah. And anyway, what happened then was we that it's those nights when everything's going cruisy, and then it all turns to shit.
Oh yeah.
So we basically we get there, and it's pouring down rain, and then Kirky was a shift sergeant. Shout out to Kirky. And anyway, he's come out and said, "Oh, he said I can't talk to her right now." He said we've got a guy. Basically, somebody's tried to break into this guy's house. He sleeps like he was asleep naked in his house, and he's now chasing that guy. He chased him out of the house nude, and he's running down the street in the rain naked, chasing this guy that tried to break into his house.
Yeah, when it rains, it pours, mate.
It
Excuse me.
does. And anyway, so we've gone around, and I said, all right, we can back at the front of the police station. We could actually drive in, and we took them around to the front of the police station. We can let them sit in the foyer, but you've got to scan them in, and then they can't get anywhere. I said, look, if you want to talk to the shift sergeant, he'll be back up here in about 20 minutes. But you can wait in here. It's out of the rain. Blah blah blah. Anyway, and I said, if you need anything, just hit the bell and somebody will, get you a coffee or something like that. Anyway, so the good thing about that was all on CCTV as well. As you know, Catherine Police Station's pretty good with its CCTV footage. And anyway, so I've scanned them in, and so old mate's gone in, and then she's sitting there having an argument with me at the front of the thing. And I said, look, I'm not going to get in the discussion now. I've got to go. I said, you can go in here and wait. She's still carrying on. Anyway, I turned to old mate. I said, you can open it from the inside, but we have to go. This is an urgent job. Anyway, so I've left them to it. Now, I didn't see anything more from that, from them that night. What happened later on, I think after we've sorted out old mate, who was naked chasing that other guy, I think Kirky was heading back to the station and saw her walking in the pouring rain towards a hospital because she reckoned she'd broken her arm. And anyway, he said, "Oh, do you need a lift?" And she basically told him to fuck off, and every other name under the sun. And he's gone, "Oh well, up to you. But if you want to lift, let me know." No. She was just abusive towards him. So anyway, he left it that. Anyway, and mate, so we had no arrests in the cells at that time. By 7 a.m. the next morning, so 5-6 hours later, we had 10 arrests. It was probably one of the busiest nights I'd worked in Catherine. And of course, remember, I'd been working since 2 p.m. the day before. So I'd just done, what was that, 5 on to 12, so 17 hours at that stage shift. Anyway, what happened was she came in. The senior sergeant came in that morning, and he basically said, "What happened last night?" I said, "Oh, blah blah blah." I said, "We've we're charging old mate with assault police." We'd also discussed that night that we were charging her for hinder police as she tried to stop us arresting the son. But we said we're just going to summons her for that, and blah blah blah. Anyway, he said he actually got a call from the local politician. So this woman actually called the local politician and said, basically Catherine police are unruly and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, we got a bit of political pressure as well. Anyway, so they were taking statements from her in the morning and all that sort of stuff, and it was pretty serious. Like I mean, if it got found out, like she claimed that we slammed her foot on the brake and she broke her arm and all this sort of stuff. And she wasn't the smartest in the world because she already actually had a fracture in her arm. We got proof of that beforehand, and also the other guy was actually in the cage and he never moved forward at all. And if we actually did slam our foot on the brakes, the car would have skid, which it didn't. And he didn't say that we put slammed our foot on the brakes. So it was probably lucky the other guy was there and vouched for us as well. But mate, that was a pretty serious complaint, and that went on for about 6 months. And anyway, the thing is, through it all, we basically got found nothing wrong. We didn't do anything wrong. I think the funny bit was when I was actually getting questioned by the superintendent. When I got you have to do a directed interview. And anyway, and he said to me, he got to the end and he said, "Would have you done anything different?" And I said, "Yeah, I would." He said, "What?" I said, "I would have actually ground stabilized her, cuffed her, and arrested her right then and there." And he goes, and I said, "Tell me I didn't have the power to. Tell me I didn't have the power to. And he goes, no, you did. And I said, exactly. I said, you won't get that same tolerance next time. I said, I was trying to de-escalate the situation, and she just took me for a ride. And I said, it's not going to happen again. Yeah, mate. So that's that's a bit of a shit fight. But
Yeah.
and all in all, he got found guilty of assaulting police, and she got found guilty for hinder police. So
Mate, so a couple of things just to sort of discuss back and forth that, and like looking back now, because I mean, that's a very long. That's 13 years ago. We're relatively junior police still.
yeah,
Now, there's a lot of water under the bridge there. There was a lot more experience after that, and even when you were telling the story, I was thinking, why didn't she get arrested straight away? But you just said that. Yep. I would have,
yep,
same thing. It would have been you're gone and you're gone. What are you doing, mate? You going home? No worries. Right, bang, clack, clack in the cage. We're busy. Go. You're both
yep,
drunk. Deal with you later. My second point was I want to make a complaint against police. Yep, absolutely, no problem at all. You've got every right in the world to make a complaint against police. We're too busy right now. There's no one to take a complaint, but that there's no caveat. There's no time limit. Anytime you like, you can call anyone. You can do whatever you like. You can come up to the station. You can do what you want, but you can't do it right now because we're flat out. Simple as that.
yep, yep,
And as the shift sergeant, I would have said that too. I said, no, operationally, we can't deal with this matter right now. You make some notes of what you want to talk about tomorrow. And the other thing is you're affected by alcohol right now. You're also borderline, well, in my mind, you're committing offences. So you can complain about that when your matters, when
yep,
you're being dealt with by us. Then it would have been, you can come up there tomorrow. I want a lift. No, we're not a taxi. We're a police car. You're not getting a lift. Not that we didn't give lifts to people all the time. When people were genuinely, oh, do you mind if I get a lift home? And this is pretty rare these days, but it used to be
yeah.
relatively common.
Oh,
The old
yeah,
blue light taxi wasn't just for carting your mates around here on the grog. It was a good way of just removing little issues, and even just people who were doing the right thing. And you couldn't get a taxi and they're standing around like, is there any chance of a lift? Excuse me. It's like, yeah, mate, no trouble at all. Jump in. The only thing that we used to do is we say, listen, you're under no obligation, but the only way we can really carry you is in the cage because the back of our vehicle, back seats full of our kit bags and all our personal gear. And quite often there might have been a party pack sitting in access to them. So realistically, you can't have weapons just available to members of the public. So we would say, if you want a lift, you can get in the cage. And the overwhelming majority of people were happy as to do that. You
yeah,
get a group in the back taking photos of each other taking selfies in the back of the police car, and it wasn't a drama.
yeah,
We used to log just we've got a conveyance on board. It was just we've got a conveyance, start kilometres of this, end kilometres that, mobile clear from the conveyance. You cover yourself that you've just given someone a lift from here to here, and that you haven't bloody abducted somebody. But
yeah,
that was very, very common with compliant people who just wanted, it was just doing a favour for people.
yeah,
But yeah, like as a sergeant that night, I mean, this is speaking from 15 years, not bloody as we were back then, 4.5 years or whatever it
yeah,
was.
that's right.
So this is the answer would have been absolutely not. You're not. I'm not giving you a lift now, and I'm not taking your complaint right now. You're intoxicated, and we're too busy. So no,
Yep.
we're allowed to say no.
Yeah, 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 exactly
And that
right.
would have been, you can absolutely make a complaint against police. Of course you can, but it's not happening now. Like you don't get to block someone else's emergency because you want to make a complaint. The complaint isn't urgent.
No.
There may be matters that are urgent and require immediate police response, and that's where you prioritise your resources.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
sorry, mate. I just remembered a bit there too. She actually, when she made the complaint, she said she would drop the complaint if we dropped the charges against her son.
yeah, well, that's straight up. Yeah, I mean, if you want to go down that road, that's a bit of bribery. So
Well,
absolutely not. And what? Just say that again for the recording, will you? Yeah.
well, the funny thing was, I remember when she was, so the court date, we actually it went to hearing first. Anyway, I went down there to give evidence. And anyway, I walked in and the prosecutor called me over and said, oh, Schultzy, you're not needed. And she was there with the defense lawyer. Anyway, the defense lawyer goes to me, he goes, don't worry. He said, she's nuts. Even the defense lawyer was saying that. And
Yeah.
he goes, yeah, he said she's going to plead guilty. And he goes, wasn't there a complaint in relation to that? And I told him exactly what I just said. I said, yeah, she said she'd drop the complaint if we drop the charge against her son. He goes, that's perverting the course of justice. And
Yeah.
I thought, oh, I said, are you sure you're a defense lawyer? That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Oh, yeah, I do know the people you're talking about, and oh
Yeah,
my
yeah, I thought you'd figure it out.
yeah, and also very entitled people too. So they're from a
Yes.
fairly famous family around Catherine that once upon a time were quite quite respected, and most of them
Yep.
still are a bit. But yeah, those particular ones they were not, but they still rode their name. I'm not going to
Oh, they
mention
did.
the name, obviously, but
Yep.
yeah,
Yep, that's
they
exactly
still
right.
they thought they were
Um,
royalty, and they weren't. Yeah,
I think the only other funny part about that was I did speak to the superintendent this about 6 months, and I said, "Oh, what's happening?" He goes, "Oh, mate, it's basically all gone away." And he said the only thing he said we're going to give you a slap on the wrist for not locking the cage. Anyway, I said, "Well, sir," I said, "that's not acceptable." He said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, the fact is she wasn't under protective custody. She wasn't under arrest. She was
mm,
there voluntarily." And I said, "If I actually put a lock on that cage, forms a belief in her mind that she is, which is deprivation of liberty."
yeah,
Anyway, he backed away from that pretty quick, and we get no reprimand. So
yeah, yeah. No, we don't lock innocent people in cages. So
no, no. Actually, mate, I was just thinking about you were talking about conveyances before, and remember you and I were driving around in one of the unmarked cars one night, and we because there was a couple of unruly people traveling around. This is when we're working in crime, and
I know what
we
you're talking about. Yep.
yeah, you remember that one, and we actually these two women were walking late at night. Can you remember what time it was?
Oh, late. Yeah, like early morning, like 1, 2 a.m. Same thing.
Yeah. And anyway, we kind of pulled up and said, "Oh, there's a couple of undesirable people
Well,
roaming
what we'd
around."
had was roaming gangs of youths breaking into
That's
houses. We'd had
that's
heaps of calls for that there were unlawful, like people were catching people trying to break into the house. It was happening a lot. Like there were these mobs, and we kept chasing these kids and couldn't catch them. They just run off into the bush.
yeah,
And anyway, we said, look, and oh, that's and someone had been beaten up. No, there'd been a few jobs about these kids, and yeah, when we pulled over next to these women in an unmarked car in plain clothes and gone, yeah, hey, look, police, just letting you know, there's some bad stuff. And these women were like, do you have any idea? I was like, oh yeah, shit, sorry about that. So we hit the red and blues. So it was an unmarked car. It had red and blues. So we hit the red and blues, and then we just handed them our badges and went, yeah,
yeah.
here. And like, oh, okay, well, see, that was extremely dodgy. And we, yeah, I'm sorry about that. I can see
Yeah.
exactly how that was extremely dodgy.
But and,
But
and
didn't
kudos
you get
to
out
them.
of the car? You got out with your gun on your hip, didn't you? And said, look, we wouldn't be driving around with armed to the teeth with fake police, but unless we're a very well organised crew of bloody police impersonators. But yeah, there are a couple of school teachers, I think, heading back to
Yeah, they
Catherine.
were. Yeah. But yeah, no, that was pretty funny because yeah. But look, kudos to them. Like they asked to see our badges even when we put the red and blues on.
Oh yeah, fair
Yeah,
enough. Yeah.
ain't good on them. But yeah, it was pretty funny. Oh, geez, yeah, we would be organised, mate, if we'd locked ourselves up and stolen an unmarked police car.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But I do remember once they did finally go, yeah, no worries, we'll get in the back. I do remember then picking up the police radio and making it very clear that we had a conveyance on board from this location, heading to
Yeah,
this location, start kilometres of this. Like we made sure that it's like, shoot, yeah, we can certainly see how that would have been taken. Anyway, they did have a laugh. About a minute or two after they got in the car, they said, "Oh, it's all good now, but bloody hell, you had us going there for a second." It's
yeah.
like, yeah, yeah, sorry about that. I do apologise.
But yeah, no, there was yeah, I do remember that one. But yeah, I mean, we used to do that a lot, didn't we? Give people lifts.
Constantly, mate. It probably still does happen. I don't know. They're probably so busy now it doesn't, but
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I mean that was just a thing that you did. It was the other thing was it was definitely harm minimisation because if you can assist in removing the population from the middle of town when the entertainment precinct is closed, well, you're removing potential problems. You're just giving people the ability to get
mm,
home. And I
yeah,
mean, the purely innocent people who've just been out, had a night on the town, they've had a few drinks, they're probably a bit vulnerable. To chuck them in a car and run them home, save them walking, save them hanging around for an hour waiting for a taxi.
yeah,
It just mitigates issues.
yeah,
Um, and there was always bloody issues. Every Friday and Saturday night, I don't think I ever did a Friday or Saturday night shift in any, except maybe Tennant Creek. It didn't go off all the time, but every other one, we were locking people up. When those pubs and clubs closed, we were locking people up. Simple as that.
Oh, actually, mate. In just saying that, and just to give people a bit of uh, understanding of what Catherine's like and how much alcohol is a problem, there was one night that was completely, and I'll use a Q word, it was quiet. And it was basically the river had risen to the point that the whole town shut down because they thought it was going to go underwater. And so all the bottle-os had closed, all the, everything shut down for the night. The only call we got in that 12-hour shift was a cleaner accidentally set off the security alarm.
Yeah.
That was the only call. We were literally doing the old cop sitting back drinking coffee with our feet on the desk.
Yeah.
It was
Which just never happens.
no, that's right.
If it happens elsewhere, it never happens in the Northern Territory.
So, and just to give people another idea, when we the next night, because it was 2 night shifts in a row, of course the river had gone back down again, so everything opened up, and the next night was just mayhem.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah. Well, mate, I've got a little. It's a pretty quick one, really. This is one of the funniest ones. I've had lots and lots of complaints from all different. I was in a drug squad at one point, and we got wind that one of the defence lawyers in town, who was just basically travelling through, had told all of his clients who we'd searched for drugs and found drugs too, I might add. He said, every time the police talk to you, make a complaint, it'll get them off your back. And that was the advice, and that was like a red rag to a bull. It's like, well, we've got lots of intel that these people are, drug dealers. And secondly, every time we tip them out, we find drugs. So we're going to keep doing that. And the other thing is, it's our job. So we'd keep getting these complaints. We'd get 2-3 complaints a day for searching these vehicles, because that's what this lawyer was telling everyone to do. And anyway, in the end, it backfired, because basically the second they made a complaint against police, it was just written off as a bloody vexatious complainant. So vexatious being that they just literally make complaints every time anyone talks to them. It's like, well, hang on. Every time they've searched you, they've found drugs, and their reasons justified in their notebooks and told in interviews and in email responses to complaints are backed up with information reports, including the information report numbers from sources who aren't even them. So they're literally doing their job.
Yep. Oh yeah, definitely, mate.
But I mean, that's that all the time. Yeah, all that just constant stuff that you get. But one that was very funny, and I've told the story before, but I don't think I explained the complaint very well. So I had an incident in Alice Springs where, it is Northern Territory Policing 101. The first thing you do when you get into the job is that you'll be removing alcohol from people and tipping alcohol out and taking drunks into custody. It used to be a hell of a lot more prevalent. They've tightened up custody rules, which I'm not necessarily against. It's, you've got to be accountable for people in your custody, and I've sort of spoken about that before. And look, when we first joined up, mate, it was a bit loose. There was just people in cells everywhere. I'm not saying it wasn't justified that they were in the cells. It's just that there were lots and lots and lots of people in those cells, and there was certainly the ability for things to go wrong. But anyway, this one particular night, Alice Springs, it was a night time, probably, 10 o'clock at night. We pulled up. There was a group at the old bow repairs, as you come into town there, so entering the main sort of area of town from the north. And it's a very, very well-known area. Quite often you'll swing the lights across there and you'll see 400 people in the middle of the night. No exaggeration. With just grog and fighting and just wild stuff. Cars with lights doing burnouts. It's just wild. So anyway, you'll see that. And we saw this group of older sort of people, like they're quite elderly, like in their 60s and 70s. They were sitting around drinking and carrying on. Anyway, so we just pulled up and removed their alcohol. And this one old fella picked up a plastic bag, and I heard the bottles clink. And he's walking away from us. I said, hey, mate, just pull up. Hey, old fella, just pull up. Come back here. Anyway, he ignored me and just kept walking. So I walked over to him, and I grabbed him by the arm. I said, mate, stop. I've told you to stop. And he just swung around, because I'd grabbed the arm that was holding the bag. And he swung around with his left hand and just belted me in the face. Like, just one of those times where you just get belted. Anyway, my response to that was to shove him on his ass. I just pushed him over. And he would have been in his early 60s. He's still a pretty fit old bugger. But anyway, he belted me, and it bloody hurt.
Yeah.
Anyway, I pushed him over, and I heard the bottles hit the ground. I saw him hit the ground, and he got up and he wanted to fight and all the rest of it. So anyway, I sort of just wrapped him up, and, I think I put him on the ground and handcuffed him and put him in the cage and took his alcohol away. Anyway, he was charged with assault police and just the real minor stuff with the alcohol, and that all went through. He had a criminal history as long as a phone book. But anyway, I thought nothing more of it. And anyway, I think that must have been my last night shift, and so I had a few days off. I came back and I had an email that I had to respond to a complaint against police that we'd, and they said, "Oh, just please read this and respond in email, and further investigation may take place." I was like, "Yeah, right, no worries." Pretty standard. So I read through it, and I'm trying to work out what job it was because remember, Alice Springs is extremely bloody busy. And I remembered, oh, yeah, that's the old bugger who punched me in the mouth. Because the other thing was, he made my nose bleed and split my lip, but it didn't knock off. I kept working. Like I just
Yeah.
wiped my nose with a bloody wet wipe, and we all had a laugh, and we just kept going. That was how life is. It's a fairly tough old show.
Yeah.
So anyway, I responded to the email, and I read through it, and the complaint was that we'd bashed him senseless on the ground, that we'd punched him repeatedly. You got to remember, we were wearing body-worn camera by this stage, which recorded the entire thing. It wasn't the current style. It was the older style that we sort of were trialing in 2015, 2016 in Alice Springs. But the whole thing was caught on body-worn camera. Anyway, he said that we pummeled him into the ground and beat him senseless and then threw him in the cage, then sprayed him continuously with pepper spray, which we didn't. And we would have proven that real easy. Like the pepper spray was real easy to prove because he just got out of the cell. He got out of the watch house and went straight into his cell, and there was no pepper spray anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's carrying on about this and that, and the young defence lawyer Carlos, the Central Australian Aboriginal Legal Service lawyer, has gone, "This is an outrage. This is a highly racially charged hate crime against innocent people." I was like, oh, for God's sake, go and write a novel somewhere. Anyway. And she's gone, while he admits that he punched the constable in the face after he vigorously assaulted his arm, which is a load of shit. I grabbed his arm no harder than I'd get my, if I'd want to get someone's attention, like, hey, mate, how you going? And it went on and on and on. But they admitted this. We acknowledge that he did punch the constable in the face and all this sort of thing. But however, the response was nothing short of a racially motivated hate crime and assault and battery. We want this officer charged with these heinous crimes and blah, 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 blah. And I said, do you want me to respond to the email, or do you want to just watch the body worn? And then I'll show you the footage from the watch house and this and that. Anyway, that complaint went away pretty bloody quick. But I tell you what, when you come back to work after days off where you didn't go to one job, you go to bloody 30, 40, 50 jobs a shift. All of it, and you're dealing with lots of people, you're using force all the time, you're getting, you're always got your wits about you. You're just on edge all the time when you're on shift in Alice Springs, or anywhere, really.
Yeah.
But you just can't remember things. And then to come back and have that, it does give you that burn in your gut, like, shit, what is this? What, because you do think a lot of the times, like, you could just do your job and someone might see it a different way and they might go, and you just, it's bloody stressful. And I would even say the complaints process against police is far more stressful than dealing with crooks.
Oh, mate, I would definitely guarantee with you there. It puts a lot of stress on officers. Mate, I was actually thinking after I left, because that last year I did in Borroloola, and I got 10 complaints against me just in the 1 year. Because it's a very volatile place, and they don't like you, stopping them from breaking the law, so they complain all the time. And not one of them was like I was cleared of all of them, but I actually had it only years later after I left the police that I realised I had anxiety about people making complaints about me, even in day-to-day life. And it took me quite a while to get over that, because it only when I'm looking back, I actually did. I was worried, I was doing jobs for people and all that sort of thing. I was constantly worried that people would complain about me.
Yeah.
So it takes a while to get rid of that. So, for anybody going through that, it's normal. Well, if I'm normal.
Well, no other profession is held to that level of accountability.
No, you're right.
It's just, and I'm serious about that. I've seen lots of other professions. I'll tell you one profession that's not held accountable whatsoever is the legal profession.
Yeah.
I can't see anywhere where even, like, it literally, if a magistrate makes a major mistake, oh, yes, His Honour erred. Okay, so His Honour, with all these degrees and years of experience, making an absolute squillion. And Supreme Court judges and politicians in this country are the only people who get a pension. No one else gets a pension.
That's right.
So, these people, if they make a catastrophic mistake, oh, yes, His Honour erred. It's like, well, hang on, what about the 23-year-old constable in the middle of the night who'd just been smacked in the face and blah, 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 and did this? And, well, he didn't err, did he? You want to hang, draw, and quarter that poor little bugger.
Right, yeah.
It's
look,
just
after and sometimes after he worked like that, one complaint against me, I ended up finishing at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. No, midday in the afternoon. So I worked 22 hours straight.
yeah, yep.
It's just yeah, but
I think the big thing with complaints is, look, like I said at the beginning, yep, there is a complaints process. If you've been aggrieved, absolutely, you should make a complaint.
yes,
The other thing is, it improves quality. It might even raise a concern about the mental health of a particular member in that they've just seen too much shit and they've forgot how to bloody communicate to human beings.
mm,
I've spoken about a run-in that my father-in-law and myself had with the highway patrol in Dorrigo. And I was pretty upset with them both. I thought they were just being very unreasonable. So there are times when a complaint against police is not a bad thing, but um, the, the overwhelming majority of complaints that police get are just rubbish from people who don't like being held accountable for their actions.
yeah, yep.
I'll very quickly cover off on one from Borroloola because you're right; they were very, very good at making complaints because the population was well connected with people who had so-called political influence and all the rest. And I got a complaint against police about 18 months after I left Borroloola. By this stage, I was well and truly in Alice Springs. And um, anyway, it was an 18-year-old young lady who, and the behaviour that she always displayed was very entitled. She was a very pretty young girl, and she seemed to be able to think she could get away with everything because a lot of people let her get away with stuff because she was a pretty little girl. Anyway, she and another group assaulted a shopkeeper in Borroloola, and they threw a few things around and all the rest of it. And there were counterclaims made back and forth. It was just turned into an absolute shit fight. And there was a big riot at one stage between the different parties. And just you know what it's like, mate.
Oh yeah, I actually remember that one. Yeah,
Yeah. So this particular job, anyway, I ended up I did a pretty thorough investigation there because I really wanted to dot the I's and cross the T's. And anyway, about a month or so after that incident, I actually filed charges against her for aggravated assault a worker, all kinds of different offences that she'd committed that day. I also, to make sure I was being fair, charged every single person that I identified in the heaps of CCTV and the statements that we'd taken. I deliberately put files together and charged every single person involved in that.
yep.
The only person arrested was this one particular girl because I needed to put her on bail conditions. So she was arrested for a very brief period of time just so that we could take her fingerprints, take a photo, charge her, and then give her a bail form. So from memory, she didn't even go in the cell. She was only in custody for about 20 minutes, and she sat out the front basically in the waiting room, which is also pretty common in Aboriginal communities. If you've got a compliant person who you're not too worried about and no urgency and things, it's a common thing to do for de-escalation of people getting anxiety and getting all cranky and stuff. So anyway, she went through court. She pled not guilty. The matter went through a very large hearing. I actually had to go back. Did I go back or video call? Whatever. I had to give evidence anyway.
I
So
think
I
you
went.
did video.
I
Yeah,
gave evidence in court in Borroloola. I have a video link for that particular case. And in the end, she was found guilty. She didn't go to jail, but she did get a bottom smacked pretty well. And anyway, it would be a week or two after that court matter that I get this complaint against police. And it was just rubbish. It's all this, I've targeted her because she's a popular young girl and he didn't want to see an Aboriginal woman succeed and all this shit. I'm like, what?
yeah,
Anyway, I knew it was bullshit. So I just responded. I said, in response, what I used to do was just logically respond to everything that's outlined in the complaint. So you don't get emotional. I just
yeah.
read through it and went, the police officer stared at her in such a way that it was like he was jealous of her good looks or some ridiculous crap. And I have no recollection of ever having those kind of thoughts. Or whatever. No, that's not true. The police officer from day one told her, I'm going to get you for this. No, that never happened. No. All the evidence was fabricated against her. Nah, it's all CCTV and statements from other people who don't particularly like police either. So,
And she
nah.
got found guilty.
She got found guilty in court. But I finished off by saying it appears that the catalyst for this complaint against police has come from her being held accountable by the courts in that she has been found guilty after a hearing, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that was the end of that. So, yeah, this is the crap you have to deal with quite a bit. And it's just there is a complaints process in place for very legitimate reasons, but they are open to abuse, are they not, my friend?
Oh, definitely, mate. Yeah, and look, mate, you did mention something there before, and for people, we used to get a lot come through
Mm.
after the arrest or even after the court case, when especially when either Narja lawyers or they'd sit there and pick something up and they'd put a complaint in. To the thing that I started training people kind of early on, and if you listen to a lot of my 140 cautions. When I first arrested people, a lot of the time I would sit there and go, "Are you happy with the?" Or how do you feel about the way police have treated you today? And they,
Mm.
mate, 99% say, oh, yeah, we're happy. Yep. Have you got any complaints? No, I've got no complaints. And then suddenly, like, 4 months down the track or 6 months down the track, you get this complaint come in. And I just sit there and go, listen to the 140 caution. They didn't have a problem at the time. It's
No,
all video. There's no injuries. Like we had ones saying that we broke their arm and all this
yeah,
sort of thing. And we've got video footage of them holding signs up, when they're getting charged and all that
yeah.
sort of stuff. So
I don't think a lot of people realise that the fact that if you say something, we will investigate that.
yeah,
You want to tell a lie, you want to make sure you're a pretty thorough liar because we will find out. Look, we can just go and get CCTV from anywhere. We can
yep,
go and interview witnesses. We can pull records. Okay, so you said we're going to ask a statement. We're going to ask you all kinds of questions. A very thorough. Oh, the cops bashed me up and broke my arm. Tell me
yep,
more about that. Well, they did this. So you said they broke your arm. Tell me exactly what they did to break your arm. Now tell me exactly where this occurred. Oh, right outside the police car in the bloody watch house, Sallyport. Okay,
yep,
no problem at all. So tell me exactly what happened then. You said you had a broken arm. That would take a medical diagnosis. Tell me exactly where you went. Yeah, I then went to the hospital. I got an X-ray. I did this. No worries. Well, there's a warrant. There's
yep,
medical records. There's CCTV of the hospital. Not to mention the CCTV of the Sallyport that shows the not assault take place.
yeah.
So
That's right.
it's I'll talk about one from our I won't mention his name, but mates who one and famous one that I had to investigate
Yep.
was a couple of really good coppers in Catherine. Um, they had a complaint of rape against them. They brought
Oh,
in
was that the one they said happened in the cells?
in the no, it happened in the Sallyport.
Oh, right, in the cell.
So
Yeah,
for
yeah. I
those who
know
don't
that.
know, a lot of watch out or any custodial setting where you drive a vehicle into it, prisons, watch houses, they have what's called a Sallyport. Basically, what that is the actual custodial centre, so the watch house or the prison will be secure from the inside of a door, and there's another door on the outside that can open. But while it's open, the inside door can't open, and while it's shut, the inside door can open. Blah blah blah. So basically, it's a sealed area where a vehicle can drive into. We call it a Sallyport.
Yep.
Now they are completely covered. I know now that I'm not sure about back in the day, but they certainly do now have audio recording all over them. They have every possible angle of CCTV. There are no dark areas in there. The vehicles are completely covered by CCTV. There is nothing in there that's not recorded by video and audio.
And you can hear a pin drop in the
You can
later
hear a
ones.
pin drop. The audio, you can literally hear, like you can hear everything. There's no
Yep.
hiding a thing. Anyway, this woman's gone, yeah, they dragged me out of there and they said, nah, just hang on a minute to the watch house keeper who was trying to open the door. Then they ripped my clothes off and they took turns raping me and they were doing high fives and all this shit. And we went, oh, so tell me more about that. Tell me more. And she was pretty detailed and pretty graphic and pretty gross in the way she was carrying on and giving a statement. Anyway, we deliberately got her to write a stat dec because we knew it was wrong. And there's an
Yep.
offence in the Northern Territory called um, what is it? False stat dec.
Oh,
Anyway,
false back deck. Yeah.
basically compile a false statutory declaration. It's an offence.
Yep.
Anyway, so we thought, well, we're going to take a statement off you, as we would from anybody who makes a complaint of rape. And then we went straight to the watch house just to be thorough, and we reviewed her custodial episode where she drove into the Sallyport. And yeah, she kicked and screamed all right, but she got out of the back of the cage and was swearing abuse and all the rest of it. And the boys took her by the arms and they walked her in the Sallyport. She was in the walked her into the watch house reception area. She was in the Sallyport for about 10 seconds.
Yep.
She'd claimed it had taken 20 minutes or something while they took turns raping her, basically.
Yep.
So they walked her into the reception area where they got her to calm down and sit down, which is completely, once again, audio, video, the whole lot. Her whole custodial episode was completely on camera and video and audio.
Yep.
We immediately wrote the job off and then started to compile a prosecution file for her for provide false stat dec.
Yep.
Anyway, we were mentioning how we're going to press these charges against it because it was an internal investigation. We reported back to the commander at the time, and I've already mentioned how I don't really get along with this commander very much. He's gone, no, we're not charging her. We can't be making people out to be charged when they've made a complaint against police. It's like she didn't make a complaint. She alleged that the two police officers, sexually assaulted her.
Mm,
That's a life imprisonment offence. She
yep.
made this allegation. She signed a statutory declaration hoping that those men would be investigated, arrested, charged, and sent to prison for the rest of their life.
Yep.
No, we're charging her. Anyway, in the end, he overrode it and we didn't charge him. But
That's
pretty,
if I've got a gripe of anything in the police, they used to do that a lot because they
mm.
reckon it would turn people off making complaints, and it really pissed me off because the amount of trauma those officers, even though they know it's not,
Well, they know it's not going to go anywhere, but still, they got accused of rape. Like, bloody
exactly,
hell.
yeah, exactly, and people should if you're not teaching people the right lesson if you don't prosecute them for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, mate, I completely agree with you there.
Well, you know what? If someone made a complaint where they said, "Oh, they assaulted me. They were hard when they gripped my arms and all this sort of stuff," we go, "Yes, no, you are correct. They were hard on your arms and they were using force. Their
Yep.
force was justified because of this, and this." Well, there's no justification of sexual intercourse without consent.
No, no,
So
yeah,
that there was beyond that. She was being when she is a very horribly manipulative criminal. This is not her first rodeo, and I'm sure she's had plenty since. So, it basically would go towards the fact that anything she ever says, you're not really going to believe unless you get a lot of supporting evidence for her testimony, basically.
yeah, yeah, mate. And I still remember that one.
Yeah,
Yep, I remember that one well when that complaint came in. I think I was working general duties. But yeah, yeah, you were working crime at the time.
yeah.
Um,
What annoyed us was that the commander came down, and instead of just treating it for what it was, is like, no, take the statement off her, just disprove it, make sure it can be disproven by third parties,
yep,
because it was bloody clearly obvious that it didn't happen.
yeah,
Um, we're not saying that. We of course we investigate everything, but I mean, this was so far out there that was just ridiculous. The fact that we prove it as bullshit within 5 minutes of her giving her statement was fact of that.
yeah, yeah,
And then to be told for it still to be treated like, no, this is serious. Make sure it's investigated. Well, of course we're going to investigate it.
yeah.
But it was like a bit of a joke. And I remember we weren't allowed to talk to the two coppers who were good mates of ours. Like we weren't allowed to talk to them until the investigation was complete. And then I said to him, "Oh no, we've done that invest." And I mean, the thing would be if we'd have discovered any level of criminality, we'd have been immediately removed from the investigation because it's a conflict of interest. We're not going to investigate our friends
No,
for an
no,
extremely
that's
serious offence.
yeah,
And a matter like that would probably be farmed out to a different police force, or maybe major crime or something. Probably major crime. If they even, or just given how well known these two coppers were, it may have even been the situation where if there was fact to it, it would have been farmed out to potentially the federal police or a different police force
oh,
because
definitely,
because of the level of you just need to be that transparent with something like that. But the fact of the matter was, it was pretty bloody obvious to blind Freddie on a galloping horse that it was all bullshit.
yeah, 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 exactly
So
right. That was probably one of the suckful things I like when you work crime, and like a number of times I do investigate, friends of ours. And I think well, when I was working in the family and domestic violence unit, so if they have a domestic, I do investigate those as well,
yeah,
which is with a whole nother personal level.
yeah,
But yeah, yeah. No. Anyway, mate, we're at 53 minutes.
yeah.
You
That's
can talk
complaints.
underwater.
That's complaints against police, mate.
Yep. Well, mate, we've got plenty more. We
Oh,
could keep going.
we haven't even scratched the surface there.
No.
There's thousands of them. I'll give you another really, really fast, ridiculous one. I got a complaint against police for sitting in plain clothes, wearing my. So I was in the Casuarina shopping centre. I was in Strikeforce Trident, so I had a t-shirt and cargo pants on. I was wearing my accoutrement belt, which is in compliance with general orders, while on duty. I had a police radio sitting on the bench, and I was eating a sandwich. I was on my lunch break. I was sitting there with one of the other officers, and I got a complaint against police because they found it very intimidating that armed police were sitting down in the food court.
Yeah.
So sorry about that.
You terrible, terrible man.
Yeah, yeah.
Bloody, just walking around intimidating people like that, Damo. Really, mate.
Actually, me eating. I think I was. yeah, anyone watching me eat it is pretty intimidating. So I sort of
Mate, just before we go, I think the funniest bit about that first story I told you was we reviewed the CCTV footage from BP where we spoke to those three people, and I never realised my walk before, but it was like a front on from above view, and as I walked in there, mate, I walk in like I own the joint.
yeah, you arrogant prick.
I I was sitting there going, I was looking at myself in the video footage going, holy shit, do I really walk like that?
Yeah, nah, I wasn't going to say anything, Schultzy, but anyway. Oh, that'll do us, mate. I'll see you tomorrow.
Well, that you will, mate. Yep, and we'll give a shout out to Pete Maniatis because we're catching up with him tomorrow afternoon. So, yeah, looking forward to some good times, mate. But that's it for us, mate.
Happy days. We'll talk to you next week.
See ya.